A dull, throbbing pain radiated from the inside of his thigh, a damp mark against his skin. Caleb buried his face in his arms, his shoulders shaking with quiet, frustrated sobs. He asked through a wavering voice why Liam always had to do this to him, what he had done to deserve such animosity. The architect of his misery stood over him, his throat working. Liam's gaze fell to the bite mark, a faint flush creeping up his neck. He reached out, his hand hesitating before gently ruffling Caleb's hair. He apologized, saying he hadn't meant to make it hurt, and asked to see the wound. Caleb had heard these apologies many times before, and they did little to prevent the next incident. Each time, a new and baffling reason would present itself. The first time had been during a sweltering heat wave last summer. The dorm was empty, so after a shower, Caleb had thrown on an oversized band t-shirt, forgoing pants as he did his laundry. When Liam returned, he'd found Caleb like that and pinned him against the bathroom door, his teeth pressing a firm but not quite painful mark into his shoulder. Another time, after Caleb mentioned how pretty a girl from their statistics class was, he found himself pressed into his mattress while Liam bit his arm. There had been a third and a fourth. Today's offense, however, was the most bewildering yet. All Caleb had done was tell Liam he was planning on moving out. This bite was sharper, deeper, and he couldn't fathom which part of his announcement had set Liam off. With every previous instance, Caleb had swallowed his anger and his fear. The other guys in their suite, Mark and Chris, had told him that Liam was from some dynasty of old money, that his family had donated the entire west wing of the university library. He was not the kind of person one picked a fight with. Caleb still didn't understand why someone with Liam's resources would choose to live in a cramped dorm room. Unlike him, Caleb's monthly spending money was barely enough for groceries and the occasional pizza, which was precisely why he'd been so determined to leave. Tutoring gigs and part-time shifts at the campus coffee shop would cover the rent, and the distance from Liam would mean an end to the biting. It had to be hatred, Caleb reasoned. That was the only explanation. So when he'd finally saved enough for a deposit and first month's rent, he had excitedly shared the news, expecting Liam to be pleased. Instead, Liam's face had become an unreadable mask before he dragged Caleb onto the bed and left this throbbing mark. It made no sense. If Liam detested him so much, his departure should have been a cause for celebration. And yet, Liam wasn't entirely a monster. During midterms, he would reserve a private study corral in the family-funded library, just for the two of them, and patiently walk Caleb through his calculus problems. On nights when nightmares left Caleb trembling and afraid to fall back asleep, Liam would silently climb into his narrow bed and stay with him until dawn. His reserved nature meant words were sparse, making his thoughts an impenetrable fortress. And he was brilliant, annoyingly so, a campus legend with a face that could have been carved from marble, a GPA that never dipped below a 4.0, and a collection of academic awards that filled a shelf. As Mark often said, just being friends with Liam was a bragging right. Caleb clung to these moments of kindness, using them as a shield against the pain and confusion. But this time, the bite was too much, and the tears had come unbidden. Liam gently lifted Caleb's ankle, inspecting the mark on his thigh. He leaned in and blew softly on the reddened skin, murmuring that it would stop hurting soon. Liam's hand was large, easily encircling Caleb's ankle, and Caleb found he couldn't pull away. He asked with watery eyes if Liam did this to other people. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Liam's lips. He told him it was something reserved just for him. The words sent a fresh wave of misery through Caleb. So it was true. He was a special target for Liam's torment. Liam let out a low, musical chuckle. He leaned closer to Caleb's ear, his voice a soft murmur. "You idiot," he whispered. "Of course I don't hate you." Caleb didn't believe him, suspecting it was just another lie. But he nodded anyway, wanting the moment to be over. He mumbled that he would forgive him this one time, but it couldn't happen again. Seeing that the crying had stopped, Liam gently wiped a stray tear from the corner of Caleb's eye. He leaned down, his voice casual as he asked about the apartment Caleb mentioned, wanting to know the specific location. That evening, a text message arrived from the landlord. It was a place Caleb had found through an upperclassman. A perfect spot close to campus with reasonable rent and good amenities. He'd been planning to pack his things the following week. The landlord's message was abrupt. Someone had offered a significantly higher price for the apartment, and he'd accepted. Caleb's deposit and first month's rent would be refunded, along with an additional $2,000 for the inconvenience. Caleb stared at his phone, baffled. The rent was only $400 a month. He had paid $1,200 upfront plus a security deposit. Now it was all being returned, plus a $2,000 penalty payment. It seemed impossibly generous. For a broke student, it was a windfall, but it left him back at square one. And he'd already told Liam he was leaving. Liam was surely going to be furious now that he was stuck here. He scrolled listlessly through online housing boards, searching for another option. That's when a post on the campus confessions page caught his eye. The title read, "Made my roommate cry by biting him. What's wrong with me? The more he cries, the more I want to do it. How do I make it up to him?" The comments section was a mix of shock and enthusiastic encouragement. One comment suggested that if he really wanted to make him stop crying, he should try kissing him until he couldn't breathe. Another, which the original poster had liked, simply said, "Block his mouth with yours. A French kiss so deep he forgets how to make a sound." The description of the roommate felt unnervingly familiar. Caleb's heart began to pound against his ribs. He clicked on the author's profile and saw the latest update, posted at 5 in the afternoon. "Little roommate is being disobedient lately, always talking about moving out. How should I punish him?" The top voted comment, pinned by the author, read, "Simple. If he tries to run again, make sure he doesn't have the strength to." The phone suddenly felt scorching hot in his hand. At that moment, Liam's voice cut through the silence, asking Caleb what was wrong, that he looked pale. Caleb stammered that it was nothing. He told himself not to panic, that he didn't have proof it was Liam. But the details aligned perfectly. The campus IP address, the biting habit, his own recent attempts to find a new place. 1,000 terrifying scenarios flooded his mind, and a cold sweat broke out on his back. Liam's gaze was still gentle as he told Caleb to let him know if he felt unwell. Caleb gave a weak nod. After Liam left, he nervously returned to the posts. Someone in the comments had asked what the author would do if the roommate actually found a place. The author had replied with a simple smiling emoji and the words, "I won't let him." The landlord's text message. The sudden cancellation. It wasn't a coincidence. But why would Liam go to such lengths? Did he despise Caleb so much that he had to keep him close by to torment him? The thought clashed violently with the memories of Liam's quiet care. Caleb's intuition screamed at him that he needed to get away. Next time, he wouldn't be so foolish as to announce his plans. He would find a place over winter break, move his things quietly, and by the time the new semester started, he would be gone. Liam wouldn't be able to do anything about it then. He clenched his fists, convinced the plan was foolproof. For the next week, he maintained a careful facade, acting like a normal roommate during the day. At night, he would anxiously check the confession page for updates, having created a new, anonymous account that followed only the mysterious poster. One night around 11, Just as he was lying in bed, a new post appeared. Roommates so endearing. Lights out in a minute. Really want to sneak over to his bed while he's sleeping, and then Caleb was taking a sip of water. His hand trembled, and the glass slipped, spilling icy water all over his bed. A jolt of panic shot through him. He scrambled to salvage the situation, but the damage was done. His sheets and comforter were soaked. It was late October, and the nights were getting cold. It was his only set of bedding. His suitemates, Mark and Chris, gathered around, asking what he was going to do now that his bed was a swamp. No one had a spare blanket. Caleb felt tears of frustration welling up. The dorm doors were locked for the night. Getting a hotel room was impossible. Just as despair began to set in, Liam spoke up. His voice was calm as he suggested Caleb could just share his bed for the night. Caleb froze. The other two immediately agreed it was the only solution. Caleb, desperate, turned to them, asking if he could just squeeze in with one of them instead. Mark scratched his head, explaining that he and Chris were both terrible sleepers who thrashed around all night. Chris added with an apologetic smile that he also snored and ground his teeth, but that Liam was a still sleeper and had a much more comfortable mattress. Caleb couldn't bring himself to sleep in the same bed as the man whose intentions were a terrifying mystery. He insisted he was a deep sleeper and wouldn't be bothered by snoring. Liam's gaze turned sharp, a shadow passing over his features. He asked Caleb quietly if he was avoiding him. The question, though spoken without inflection, carried a chilling weight. Caleb felt a shiver run down his spine. He quickly tried to explain, stumbling over his words, saying he was just worried about bothering Liam, that he'd heard Liam didn't like people in his personal space. Liam offered a small smile, replying that Caleb wasn't just people. Caleb's mind went blank, unable to conjure another excuse. He had the distinct feeling that refusing again would have unforeseen and dangerous consequences. So when the lights went out, Caleb found himself lying stiffly in Liam's bed. The very posts he'd been monitoring to protect himself had led him straight into the lion's den. He lay flat on his back like a corpse, his body rigid. The bed was small, and the confined space amplified everything. He could feel the warmth radiating from Liam's body and smell the clean, crisp scent of his soap, a subtle note of cedar underneath. He had to admit the mattress was far superior to his own lumpy one. But the content of Liam's posts echoed in his mind, making sleep impossible. He kept his back to Liam, his breathing tight and controlled. Liam, true to Chris's word, was incredibly still. As time stretched on and the sounds of Mark and Chris's snoring filled the room, Caleb began to relax. Maybe he had overreacted. Maybe Liam wasn't a threat. As drowsiness finally began to claim him, he felt a sudden, warm pressure on his ear. Liam's mouth closed over his earlobe, a wet heat that sent a jolt like an electric current through his entire body. His sleepiness vanished instantly. Terrified that Liam would notice he was awake, he gripped the sheets, forcing his breathing to remain even. Seemingly satisfied that Caleb was asleep, Liam grew bolder. He shifted, his body pressing against Caleb's back as he wrapped an arm around his waist, his lips brushing the nape of his neck. "Silly Caleb," Liam whispered, his voice thick with sleep. "Don't you know turning your back is more dangerous?" Caleb didn't understand what he meant. Surely facing him would be worse. A second later, he understood exactly what Liam meant, and a thrill of pure panic shot through him. He focused on his breathing, praying Liam wouldn't realize he was awake. Why was Liam doing this? It didn't feel like an attack. Felt like something else. Something he didn't dare to name. He remembered all the cheesy dramas he'd watched. where the wealthy heir tormented the poor scholarship student. He tried so hard not to be that cliché, to stay out of Liam's way. But Liam had sought him out. He bit his lip to keep from crying out. Just then, Liam's lips brushed against his cheek, and in a voice so faint it was barely audible, he whispered, "God, I like you so much, Caleb." Caleb's mind screeched to a halt. One thought consumed him. Was it possible Liam wasn't straight? The next moment, Liam's hand moved, and Caleb's body betrayed him with an involuntary shudder. The movement was too obvious. His mind went blank. He had failed. Liam knew he was awake. Then, a desperate idea sparked. Drawing on his knowledge of horror movies, he curled into a ball, feigning a nightmare. He mumbled fragmented pleas for help, for someone to make it stop. He waited, his heart hammering against his ribs. A warm hand settled on his back, and Liam began to pat him gently. His voice was soft, soothing. "Shoo, Caleb. It's okay. I'm here. You're safe." In that moment, despite the terror, a bizarre sense of security washed over him. He felt illogically that no matter what Liam did, he wouldn't truly hurt him. His body relaxed, and sometime later, against all odds, he fell into a genuine sleep. When he woke up, he was disoriented, sitting up in Liam's bed for a long moment before remembering where he was. The others were already awake. Mark asked him how he slept. Liam looked up from a textbook, his expression lazy and unreadable. Caleb, channeling his inner actor, explained that he'd slept okay but had a weird nightmare. Liam's gaze sharpened slightly as he asked for details. Caleb clutched the comforter. He said he dreamt of a monster with tentacles wrapping around him, holding him down so he couldn't move or escape. Liam's mouth quirked into a smile. "Maybe I just rolled over and crowded you," he suggested. That afternoon, while Liam was at a student government meeting, Caleb logged into his anonymous account to check the confession page. A new post had appeared. Update. Slept together last night. His ear is sweet and very sensitive when I bite it. The comments exploded. Caleb felt his own ears burn, the phantom sensation of Liam's mouth on them returning with startling intensity. He saw a highly rated comment asking when the poster was finally going to confess. The author replied, waiting a little longer. "He's timid. I don't want to scare him." Caleb's fingers trembled as he typed a reply. "Sorry, I'm new to this thread and a little confused. Does this mean you actually like your roommate?" He regretted it the second he hit post. He was quiet, an awkward, fringe personality. There was no way someone like Liam could be interested in him. He expected the comment to be buried. But when he cautiously refreshed the page, he found his comment had dozens of replies. Most were from other followers telling him to mind his own business or teasing him for being naive. But Liam had replied directly to him. A simple two-word response. "Yeah. A lot." It felt as if Liam were standing right in front of him, saying those words in his low, serious tone. The air was punched from his lungs. That whispered confession last night hadn't been a dream. Liam wasn't straight, and he liked Caleb. The realization didn't bring relief, only a new and overwhelming confusion. But it did mean the biting wasn't about hatred. It was something else entirely. Flustered and unsure how to process this, his first instinct was still to run. He messaged the upperclassman again, offering him more money to find another place, stressing that it had to be kept completely secret. That night, his own comforter was still damp. Liam casually offered his bed again. The offer was so sincere that if Caleb hadn't known about the posts, he would have believed it was purely platonic. Now he couldn't accept. He insisted it was fine and spent an hour with a hairdryer until his bedding was mostly dry. When he finally lay down in his own bed, sleep wouldn't come. After final exams, the dorm emptied out as everyone headed home for winter break. Liam was the last to leave. He paused at the door, ruffling Caleb's hair. "See you next semester, Caleb." Caleb felt a pang of guilt as he replied with a quiet "yeah. See you then." As Liam's figure disappeared down the hall, he told himself he wasn't really lying. They were in the same major. They would see each other in class. Once Liam was gone, Caleb began the arduous process of moving his belongings to the new apartment. The long, quiet weeks of winter break passed slowly. He still checked the confession page occasionally. 10 days until the break is over. I miss him. Saw him in a friend's tagged photo. He looks so endearing in a winter coat. This boring break needs to end, or I might just drive down to his hometown to find him. The posts made Caleb's guilt intensify. He dreaded Liam's reaction when he returned to find Caleb gone. But he reasoned it was for the best. If they weren't in the same living space, maybe Liam's interest would fade, and they could revert to being normal classmates. The first day of the new semester, his anxiety was sky high. When Mark asked in their group chat why he wasn't back at the dorm yet, Caleb typed a shaky reply explaining he'd found an affordable place off campus. Mark and Chris took the news in stride, which calmed his nerves slightly. But for a full day, Liam remained silent in the chat. The lack of reaction was more unsettling than an outburst would have been. When they saw each other in class the next day, Liam greeted him with a normal smile. Everything was too normal. Maybe the break had worked. Maybe Liam was over it. But that night, a new post appeared. A single, chilling sentence. "My little roommate ran away. What am I going to do with him?" The comment section was filled with dark, joking suggestions about kidnapping and re-education. Caleb knew it was just online bravado, but it still made him nervous. In person, however, Liam remained the same gentle, helpful presence. He'd buy Caleb a soda when he noticed his blood sugar was low and would send him notes for any lecture slides he missed. Caleb found himself wishing things could just stay like this forever. A week into the semester, Caleb came down with a fever. He emailed his professors and stayed in bed. He was drifting in a hazy, feverish sleep when a knock echoed through his small apartment. He stumbled to the door and opened it to find Liam standing there. Caleb was too shocked to speak. Liam just smiled and asked why he opened the door for people without checking who it was. Caleb stammered, asking how he found him. Liam held up his phone. He explained that all students living off campus had to register their address with the administration for safety reasons. It was too late to turn him away. Caleb stepped aside and let him in. The apartment was in an isolated building with no close neighbors. With his fever and scratchy throat, he couldn't have screamed for help even if he wanted to. As Liam walked in, he raised his hand toward Caleb, who flinched and squeezed his eyes shut. But Liam's hand only came to rest on his forehead, checking his temperature. He told Caleb to get back in bed. Liam took care of him, applying a cooling patch to his forehead and ordering soup from a nearby deli. He sat on the edge of the bed and fed Caleb spoonful by spoonful. When a little broth dribbled down Caleb's chin, Liam gently wiped it away with his thumb. After Caleb had eaten, he lay back down, and Liam leaned over him. His fingers brushed Caleb's lips, making his whole body tense. Then, his hand moved down and simply tucked the blankets securely around him. He gave a few quiet instructions and left. The moment the door clicked shut, an unexpected feeling of emptiness settled in Caleb's chest. From that day on, the confession page went silent. The followers begged for updates, but the author never replied. Caleb found himself wanting to join them, an urge that was deeply unsettling. He was lonely in his small apartment. He missed the dorm. He missed Liam. Then, his new landlord sent him a message. Someone had offered an astronomical price for his unit, a price the landlord couldn't refuse. He was given 3 days to move out, along with a check for $2,500. He was even offered help with the move. He had no choice. 3 days later, he was back in his old dorm room, facing Mark and Chris's good-natured teasing. They joked about his strange luck, constantly getting bought out of his leases by rich people. Caleb's eyes slid to Liam, who, unlike the others, showed no surprise at his return. Of course, this was his doing too. Liam just smiled faintly. "Welcome back." Caleb felt a tremor of nervousness, remembering the comments on the posts, but also a deep-seated trust that Liam wouldn't cross a line. He was too gentle for that. That evening, after his shower, he realized he'd only grabbed his pajama shirt. The other guys were out, so he figured it was fine. He walked back into the room, toweling his hair, the shirt barely covering his thighs. He was reaching for his pajama pants when the door opened, and he looked up to meet Liam's wide, dark eyes. This was exactly how it had happened the first time, when he'd walked out of the bathroom in just a long shirt, water dripping from his hair. Back then, he'd been oblivious, cheerfully asking Liam to toss him his pants. That had earned him a bite on his collarbone that left him crying on the floor. Liam had spent an hour apologizing, murmuring something about him being too cute for his own good. Caleb had been convinced it was because he dared to ask the rich kid for a favor. Now he wondered. He stood frozen, unsure what to do. But this time, Liam simply walked over, picked up the pajama pants from the chair, and handed them to him. His voice was rough, as if he were reining something in. "Here, get dressed." Caleb snatched them and scrambled into his bed, pulling the privacy curtain shut. He could hear the shower running for a long time after Liam went into the bathroom. When Mark went in later, he came out asking who had been taking a cold shower in October. Liam seemed to be actively keeping his distance. When Caleb dropped a pen and they both bent to get it, their fingers brushed. Liam retracted his hand as if he'd been burned. This was what Caleb had wanted, wasn't it? A safe, normal distance. So why did he feel a pang of disappointment? He found himself scrolling through Liam's old posts, a strange nostalgia washing over him. On a whim, he made a post of his own on an advice forum. What does it mean if you miss someone's attention after they've started acting distant, even though their attention used to scare you? The top comment was simple. "Sounds like you fell for him." The possibility had never occurred to him. He replied to the comment like, "I don't know." The internet strangers offered all sorts of advice. One suggestion seemed ridiculous at first, but the more he thought about it, the more it made a strange kind of sense. "Here's a weird trick. When he's asleep, sneak over and kiss him. If you feel a jolt like your whole body comes alive, then it's like." The idea took root. For the next few days, he watched Liam like a hawk, looking for an opportunity. But Liam was rarely truly at rest. He was a master of time management, always studying, attending meetings, or working on some project. It was humbling. How could someone like that ever be interested in someone like him? Still, he had to know. That night, he waited until the room was dark and quiet, filled with the steady breathing of his sleeping roommates. He slipped out of his bed and crept over to Liam's. Heart pounding, he leaned down and gently pressed his lips to the corner of Liam's mouth. The contact was electric. Every nerve ending in his body fired at once. In that instant, he knew. As he tried to pull away, a hand shot out and grabbed his arm, pulling him down into the bed. Liam's eyes were open, glittering in the dim light. One of his hands held Caleb's waist, The other came up to cup the back of his head. "Kiss me and run." "Huh?" Liam's voice was a low rumble. Caleb's mind raced with panic. What if the posts weren't Liam? What if it was all a huge misunderstanding? He started to stammer an explanation, but Liam's mouth covered his, silencing him. The kiss was deep and sure, and Caleb felt himself melt into it. When they finally broke apart, Liam's voice was husky. "Caleb, you kissed me. That means you're taking responsibility. No more running away." Caleb's face was on fire. "'Kay," he whispered. "I won't run anymore." Liam's breath hitched. After a long moment, he smiled and nipped Caleb's shoulder, a gentle, possessive gesture. "What took you so long to like me back, Caleb?" He sighed. "I've been waiting forever. A little longer and I don't know what I would have done." Liam's confession page finally updated. It was a single photo of two hands, their fingers tightly interlaced. The caption was only 2 words: "We're together." The comments section erupted in celebration. Mixed among the thousands of well wishes was a single, anonymous comment from Caleb. He considered telling Liam that he'd known about the posts for a while now, but he decided against it. If Liam knew Caleb had been aware of his feelings and still tried to run, he would definitely bite him again.